Again, my name is Dr. Belinda Nuth Sloboda. Let me go ahead. Can you see it as a full screen? Yes, okay.
No, not yet. No, not yet.
Like now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had everybody's faces was over top of it. So I am an assistant professor of interior design at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And I'm an interior designer by practice. I freelance on the side as well as teach full-time in interior design program. And so when I went back to get my doctorate, I wanted to get it in special education. So it was kind of interesting because I have no background in special education, but I wanted to merge my love of interior design with designing for students or people with special needs. So they found it very interesting. I was able to get into the program and graduated with it last year. And so this talk is really a portion that stemmed from my dissertation. So let me go ahead and get started. So the problem that I found was there's very little research that was conducted on material selection and furniture selection for students with special needs. A lot of times as an interior designer, we get hired, from the architect or from the builder, and we just specify paint, flooring, chairs, desks, and so forth that we normally use for an educational setting. And so students that are in a special needs classroom usually get one of those classrooms assigned to them, and it's up for the special education teacher to modify. So in my research, I saw that a lot of special education teachers would put fabric over top of their lights because they needed to dim it a little bit because it was too bright for their students. So there wasn't a lot of design aspects that were put into much thought for those special needs students. This is where, as an interior designer, I wanted to merge the two. So due to this, individuals who fall within the autism spectrum or have sensory issues are at a disadvantage compared to the typical student body. So some issues derived from my study was there was a lack of privacy depending on where the classroom was located. There was unwelcome odors if it was by perhaps like a kitchen or cafeteria. There would be flickering and humming from fluorescent lighting. For a typical student wouldn't notice the little subtle flickering or maybe the humming from those lights, but somebody that has some sensory issues, that would bother them. So instead of them being able to focus on what the teacher was saying, all they're doing is paying attention to the humming of the light. Unwanted sounds, in addition to just the lighting that I was talking about. If where the classroom was located, if students were walking past that classroom to go to an auditorium or gym class or what have you, it would sometimes have unwanted sounds. If the room was facing a busy street and there was a lot of traffic, again, that had a lot of issues. And then not being close to a multi-sensory room. So if a student was acting up, it would be nice to have it nearby, whereas a lot of times the multi-sensory room might have been down the hall or on another floor, so it was very inconvenient. So the solution that it really came up with was when designing spaces for individuals with various disabilities, we can design different strategies to employ to create optimal spaces that will have a positive impact on special learning and sensory needs. So it's something that's a little bit new. I thought there would be a lot more research in that area. And when I was doing all of my research, I really couldn't find a whole lot. So the interior designers that I work with never heard of anything along the lines of what we could actually do to make a positive impact on special needs students. So I'm talking about a few different things. We're going to be talking about the importance of location as well as lighting and materials and finishes. And I was fortunate over this past summer to get hired on to design an autistic classroom in a high school. So I was able to put into play a lot of my research, and I'm working on a casework study on that classroom, which will hopefully be out within the next month or two. We were waiting for school to be done to be able to compile all the information and see how well the students have improved because they have shown a lot of improvement over this year from the past. So this first image on the left is a good layout of special education classrooms as well as autistic classrooms and so forth, where they have this classroom that's kind of away from all of the other classrooms, the gymnasium, the cafeteria, the kitchen, the music, the auditorium, and so forth. So if students are walking past, they're not going to interfere with the special education students. If the cafeteria is making something that's has strong aroma, it's not going to interrupt them. They're not going to be able to hear music from music class or people playing basketball in gym class and so forth. It's also away from the outside, so they can still have some views, but hopefully not unwanted sounds. It also is adjacent to multi-sensory rooms, so if a child is understimulated or overstimulated and needs to get out of the classroom, they can hopefully go next door or right across the hall to a multi-sensory room to fulfill their needs and satisfy them. And then, of course, like I said, access to views is important. In this classroom, they have 2 windows, and those windows is just to a nice green hillside. In the spring, the flowers are starting to come up, and then in the fall, they're able to look at the trees and the different colors of the leaves and so forth. So access to views is important as well. Another thing I want to talk about is lighting. Natural lighting coming from inside is important. Coming inside from outside is important because it helps with our circadian rhythm. Also, LED lights are coming a long way to replace fluorescent lighting. So I was talking about the issues with fluorescent having that humming or slight flickering. LEDs are very cool to the touch. They have no humming, they have no flickering, they have a very long life, they're very energy efficient, and you can do a lot of very interesting things with them. So this image I have is a white painted wall, and depending on what color, temperature, light bulb you choose in your LED fixture, it's a cooler color. It will actually have more of a bluish appearance, and if it's a warmer temperature, it will have more of a yellowish appearance. So that color of the wall is going to change depending on the color temperature of the light bulb. And again, as an interior designer, we focus on that because we specify colors for our rooms and our spaces. So we have to make sure that we specify the correct light fixture and light bulb that's going in it so that the color is depicted correctly. As you can see, this one, this white wall, here's a little bit blue up here, and it appears a little bit more yellow orange down here. And it just has to do with the light itself. Dimmer switches is another thing that we like to include. As I was stating earlier, in my research, I found a lot of the special education teachers would put pieces of fabric over top just to soften the light. We found that if we use dimmer switches, it's very simple for the electrician to do at the beginning in the construction process, and then it allows the teachers to be able to dim the lights if they want to. A lot of times in the morning, the students aren't quite awake yet, and have it a little bit dimmer for them. And then, as they're waking up throughout the day, make it a little bit brighter, maybe during an exam or a one-on-one. So giving that teacher flexibility is helpful for the students. And then layered lighting is having different lighting supplied by different switches. So a lot of times in a typical classroom, there's one light switch and it turns lights, all of them on or all of them off. Layered lighting, if just say, for example, if you had a classroom that had 3 rows of lights, one light switch would do maybe the center row and the other light switch would do the 2 rows on the sides. And then you can play around with how much light you want in this space. So it gives them a little bit more flexibility so that they can be more successful. And then I want to talk about the importance of furniture and finishes. And I broke this up into 3: acoustics, color, and materials, and furniture. So the first one is acoustics. Sound dampening, ceiling tiles, floor tiles, and wall materials are critical in rooms, especially for students in the autism spectrum. There is a lot of sound reverberation. If somebody's working with an aid in one area of the room and there are other students that are working in another area, they need to be able to control the sounds. So there are special ceiling tiles that you can specify that help to dampen the sound. This image right here has ceiling clouds, so they're decorative in nature. You really can't tell what they are, but they actually help to absorb the sound so it doesn't bounce around and make the room very noisy. A lot of times you see those in cafeterias and sometimes in gymnasiums as well. Wall-mounted sound absorbent material. There's drywall that you can get that is sound absorption material. You can also do fabric on the walls or different wall panels to help absorb the sound. You can do acoustic flooring systems. This is a tile system that actually has some sound absorbent material underneath it. Carpet is another option for that. And again, it just helps to absorb sound. If you have something that is very hard surface, usually a lot of sound bounces around. And then research has found that it's best to have it below 55 decibels for reducing negative behavior. So just to kind of give you an idea, whisper is about 30 decibels and normal conversation is about 60 decibels. So they found that if it's a little bit noisier in there, they have a tendency to get anxious and act up more. If it's a lower sound, it reduces that negative behavior. Importance of color in finishes as well. The research has found that a neutral palette with blue to green is more preferred. So staying away from reds, yellows, oranges, and so forth. So finding a color within that palette is a little bit more agreeable for the students on the spectrum. This image of this classroom we did, it was called a cool concrete. It was between a tan and a gray. It was a nice neutral color, which worked well. And that will go along with our next slide, is adding RGB lights to the classroom. So these are LED lights that we spec'd out for this classroom. It gave the teacher the flexibility to change the light within the space, to find out what the students like. There's a lot for interior design with color psychology. So of course, blue is a little bit more calming and so forth. So this is a typical color, like an average classroom. So this is like your basic white on that tan painted wall. And this is with the blue lights. She said sometimes they do that quite often whenever people are a little bit anxious and they just want to relax, we'll put the blue light on. Over here is the green. It's a little bit more sometimes also relaxing depending. The teacher uses this a lot for the different holidays as well. She found, she'll use pink or red for like Valentine's Day for a little bit. She used green for St. Patrick's Day. So that was just some of the fun part of it. But to go along with the color psychology, it's very important to be able to have a neutral wall that when you put a color on it, it's going to take on that color. So for example, if I had a yellow wall and I put a red light on it, it would appear orange. So this image right here in the center is the favorite for all of the students that are in the classroom, and that is actually a white with a red undercast to it. So that's the one she keeps on most of the time. Then in addition, she can adjust the level of how bright the room is with the dimmer. And then the importance of furniture and finishes, having non-slip surfaces, natural materials, a variety of selection. So having the students be able to choose what type of seat they want.
We have about 1 minute left, Dr. Sloboda.
Right, I'm almost done. Deciding on what they want for the different types of seat, having a very simple, no pattern on the floor. And in here, we have different seats. This one rocks. This one has a wobble to it. Another one swivels. So depending on what the student needs for the sensory, they can come in and choose a seat that will fulfill their needs for that day. And then lastly, having durable furniture and soft edges. So these are bow tie tables, and they have dry erase on top so that the students can use it functionally as well as aesthetically. And that is all I have. So I just put my conclusion on here that interior designers can work in educational settings to help both special education and general education students work well together. That's
Congratulations. Thank you so much. That's